Well, thank you so much for coming to this session. I'm really excited. My name is Ray Wolf. I'm Regional Vice President covering the IC and Air Force and other areas. But you know what's so funny? This has been an interesting day for me because I've heard so much about modernization and what modernization looks like. And to show you what modernization kind of looks like, I want everybody to stand up. Everybody stand up. Come on. Everybody stand up. Come on. I can see if you're not standing up. Okay. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. Close them. Okay, everybody point north. Point north. Let's see, point north without opening your eyes. Come on. Okay, open your eyes. Yeah, okay, everybody's pointing. Okay, everybody sit down. Okay, that's kind of what modernization can be like. With IT modernization, people, programs, they have a really hard time to figure out where, I know I want to get there, I'm not really sure where I'm going to start. So for today's panel, we brought two amazing individuals, one from the Army, one from the Navy, who are going through this modernization journey currently. So I'm so excited, and by the way, they're sitting by the way, this is due north for anybody who wanted to know, and that's why I want to call up Don Yeske, and please come up Lori Mangold, please. And big round of applause.
Go Army.
Go Army. She says, you can tell where, okay.
Sorry.
Oh,
no, please.
I think you can take him. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. With all the organizations that we've been working with, everybody hears that term modernization and they go, I'm not really sure what that means. And it's fascinating within the Army and within the Navy, the programs that these are not small programs. These are major programs that affect hundreds of thousands of men and women in the armed forces. So that's why I'm very excited. You know, I could describe. I want to give Lori the chance to a brief introduction of your what you focus on and just a little bit of background for everybody.
Okay, awesome. So good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here. My name is Lori Mangold. I'm from the Army G3, and I am responsible for the transformation and modernization of the Army business systems, as well as the warfighting transformation mission area. So a couple years ago, the Army G3 realized that they didn't have an execution arm, like the people that were going to go out and actually implement the Army strategies and policies. There's a lot of digital transformation that was being the buzzword, warfighting transformation, business transformation, but no execution arm inside of the Army to do that. So everybody looks at the Army G3 to sort of do that, and so the Army stood up a new division called the Strategic Operations, and within Strategic Operations, we have Strategic Operations Enterprise, and I'm the division chief for that particular division, and we are responsible for the Army's core business process known as deploy to redeploy and retrograde a materiel. So we focus on everything from strategy, policy, the implementation of that strategy and policy, determining your force requirements, designing your force, and then mobilization, deployment, and employment activities of that force. So all of the operational activities that surround that, the systems that allow you to do that, and the data that is generated that helps senior leaders make risk-informed decisions with regards to that. So that is a lot, but that is what our division is responsible for.
That's what Lori's responsible for. Don?
My name's Don Yeske. If we haven't met, hi. I'm the Chief Solutions Architect for the Department of the Navy. I work for the Don CIO. It's a little known fact that the Department of the Navy includes two services, the Navy and the United States Marine Corps. So for the past year, I have been responsible for developing architecture for solutions at the Department of Navy level and trying to guide modernization through those efforts. And recently we released the capstone design concept for information superiority. If you haven't seen that 14-page document, shameless plug, go look it up. For 2 years prior to that, I worked for Deputy Commandant for Information, IC4 Division in the Marine Corps, and helped them write their first and second iterations of an enterprise network modernization plan for the first time in history.
Awesome. Thank you for that. First question, it's and this is a little peek into your organizations, and I'll start with you, Lori. So every organization, mission, and agency is going through some level of modernization. What are some of the lessons learned that you'd like to share with the audience from your program? And by the way, if you get a chance, please go to LinkedIn and see Lori's posts. There is, she tells the truth, and I wish everybody was as vocal and proud to what she's focusing on to really transform the Army. So
Thank you. I'm from West Virginia. We don't have a lot of candor there, or we have too much candor there, not a lot of couth. So, so anyway, some of the lessons learned that we had was, first, it's that strategy and policy gets developed, and a lot of times there's not conversations with the folks who develop that strategy and policy with the folks that actually have to execute that and make it something that you can actually turn into a tangible item, like a new business system or a war-fighting system, or the use of data in the way that it's intended to be used. So some of the lessons learned we had was forming the collaborative teams, engaging Army senior leaders at lower echelons. For us, we went out across the Army and engage the actual folks that would be using the system that we were responsible for developing and designing. We got their input. We spent a day in their life of what they do on a daily basis, how do their business processes work, what systems do they have, what tools do they have, and sort of garnered that understanding of what it was like to walk in their shoes. And from that, we were able to take that information and use it to build a requirements document that gave us a business system that would actually support them. And so the lessons learned was filling in those gaps with those teams, like not staying in your silos of excellence, not being afraid to get up. I work in the Pentagon, you work in the Pentagon. It sometimes can be a 5-sided building that just thinks about the things that occur there and not really what's reality on the ground. So a huge lesson learned was understanding what happens on the ground.
Similar. I would say first that I completely agree, modernization is a team sport.
Yeah.
So recognize you cannot do this from any central point. No single human is smart enough or well-informed enough to build a modernization plan for an armed service. You can't do it. For a company, for an organization of any size and complexity, can't be done. So get the people who are actually doing the work, get them involved, and get them involved early.
Yeah.
Similar lesson.
Yeah.
I would say as well, 2 other things very quickly. One, scope it to what you can manage. Our eyes are way too big when we start thinking about modernization. So think about what it is that you can actually achieve, right? And then build measures in so that you assure that you actually achieve it. And then finally, there's a danger in starting a modernization journey for any organization of any size that you're just gonna shoot for the moon, right? You're just gonna go crazy and you're gonna say, here's my wildly unachievable end state. And in response to that natural inclination we all have, I would say start where you are. Start from where you are. If you get the people involved who are actually doing the things that you're trying to modernize, you will have a much more realistic sense of what you can achieve. Still be grand, still be a big spectacle, but achievable.
that's not boiling the ocean, but just saying, okay, what can I do?
Yep.
So we have I'll start with Don on this question. We have a lot of partners in the room, and we have a lot of people who have amazing technologies. And I imagine technology doesn't solve every problem out there. But what advice would you give to our partners and integrators when they want to pitch you a new idea from technology that when they leave, say, man, I wish they had just done it this way? Or what advice would you, or man, I wish they had just, what advice would you give them? And I'll start with Don on this one so that I want the audience to hear from the decision makers at the top of the shop your advice. The thing I most often say to someone who shows up on LinkedIn
or comes to the office or sends an email and says, hey, I represent such and such company and I want to talk to you about our product or service. The message I send most often is, I don't really dictate what products and services we actually use. That's not my job. My job is to set the conditions where the marketplace is right, where we pick the right things, but there are people working in acquisition programs who are certainly keenly interested and who could have a lot more direct impact and influence over things like procurement decisions than I can have. So I would say, lesson one, know your audience. Reaching out blindly to anybody whose title suggests they have some authority, probably not a great way to make friends and influence people, right? So we will be honest with you if you just ask, what is it that you do? So rather than starting with, here's who I am and what I do, if you want to open a door to someone in government, ask what they do. Tell me about your role, right? And then that will guide your approach. I have introduced lots of folks to PEO Digital's, technical director, to the right program manager, to somebody over at PEO MLB. I've done that. I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to arrange those discussions and to be a part of them, but I'm not often the best person to talk to when what you want to do is sell a particular product.
Lori, same question.
So I'm going to go off of that, and I'm going to take it to the next step, assuming that you've got to the right people and you understand your audience and you know that the person that you're talking to is a person that can help influence those decisions. So you made it into my office. Please have some understanding of what it is that you can actually do for us. Like, you've taken the time to do a little bit of research about what is this business, what is the Army doing, what are their major projects, what does your company offer as significant value to me? Why do I want you? Really candidly have those conversations, because I can't tell you how many engagements I've had with industry, and I'm sitting on the other side going, they absolutely don't even know what we do here, or they don't have any idea, and they have no clue how the product they're attempting to sell me fits into our boilerplate. Mm-hmm. So I would just say just a little bit of homework. It's not a lot. You don't have to know all the answers. You certainly don't have to be an expert at it. But if you're coming in to convince me that you have the next greatest thing, tell me what makes you unique and stands out from the other 50,000 people that have said the same thing before you. That's, at least for me, that would help me.
That's super.
I'm not a technical person. So a lot of times the people that you're coming to talk to are functional in nature. And so I need you to translate that to me about why I think you're important and should care.
That's super helpful. And also from a functional standpoint, okay, how is this going to make my job and my people's work better?
Yes.
Don't sell me the technology,
Right.
Give me the solution.
Yes.
Or give me a solution to a problem that you've identified because you've done your homework.
Yep. Even if it's not something that it was relative, it's work that you previously did, but you can show me that proof of concept that you've done that is a similar problem, like you've been able to move assets from one location to another location and make sure that the right people were at the right place at the right time for the right mission. That's replicated. But tell me how you do that differently and better and why I would want you to do that.
Super helpful. Thank you. Going to pivot a little bit. So both the Army and the Navy have had to do some significant pivots in recent times. You can see everything that's happening in the world that, we knew this was going to happen, a year ago. Well, I guess not. How has the modernization efforts had to pivot to keep up with these changes so that, we thought we were going down this path. Hold on, something's happening in the world. We need to change. How are we, from a priority standpoint, how is the Army and the Navy pivoting or had to because of that? I'll start with you, Lori.
So I think COVID is a good example of that. When COVID happened, we had networks and infrastructure that was not modernized to be able to enable people to telework from all around the world. We were used to everybody coming into one location, so you have how do we better effectively communicate? We had to start thinking about how do we make sure that our security is up with regards to cybersecurity, cloud security, data security, our whole information security, the network infrastructure. So modernization activities were accelerated significantly when it came to cloud adoption policies. The other was, we're constantly responding to operational missions around the world that have different flavors. I mean, hurricanes in Florida, tornadoes in Tennessee, Ukraine, eradicating Ebola in Africa. Like, there's a lot of different things that happen. How do we start to rapidly adopt like acquisition strategies, acquisition policies? The adaptive acquisition framework was introduced as a way to be able to quickly develop prototypes or capabilities utilizing OTAs instead of FAR contracts. I mean, those were things that we did inside of the Army ahead of policy, ahead of programming, ahead of funding, implementing those strategies for doing things differently.
It is interesting when operations trump policy.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
When all of a sudden saying, okay, that's a nice policy and everything,
Right.
but have you seen what's going on in the Ukraine?
And the follow-up to that is going back and adjusting those policies to that re-engineering to now adapt to the fact that they need to be more operational in nature. So it doesn't have to be so bureaucratic. And being able to recognize when bureaucracy is necessary and when it isn't necessary. Through those rapid modernization activities and those real-world events that were happening, it sort of forces that.
I love when a process becomes transparent and say, that's how we do that?
Yeah.
We got to change that. We have to change that.
Gosh, that was dumb.
It happens. Don, how about yourself? I mean, it's been amazing to see the pivot, and I'll throw the South China Sea out there, but okay, all the things that you listed, and oh, by the way, South China Sea is changing priorities, or I don't want to go too down into that rabbit hole, but I mean, the Navy has had to decide, okay, how am I going to modernize and yet focus on this one region so significantly?
Well, part of the challenge is making sure that we're not doing literally everything in Indo-PACOM. So yes, that has our attention for obvious reasons, right? If you go out and download the National Defense Strategy, it's said in public, right? We understand who our pacing threat is. We understand, exactly what we have to do to be prepared to defeat an adversary and deter that competition from becoming violent, right? Stop short of conflict. So we're doing the things that we can do. I think it's engaged our creativity quite a lot. And I had an opportunity to talk to information warfare stakeholders from that part of the world, including the Indo-PACOM G6 recently. And they're doing some things like, working on non-geosynchronous orbit, low Earth orbit satellites, right? To proliferate our communication strategy, right? To make it more difficult for us to target, right? There are things that I can't talk about in this room, but there's a lot that we are doing that is remarkably agile. And as we do those things, we find, where systems that were set up to build aircraft carriers don't really help us in the year of execution, right? And that has always been a problem, and I think in DoD and in government broadly, it will always be a problem. The key to solving those problems is recognizing them for what they are and recognizing that everybody between you and the objective has the authority to say no, right? Everyone. The person who strokes a pen on the procurement request has the authority to say no. The person who calls the meeting has the authority to say no. The key is figuring out who you can ignore and finding the people who have the much rarer ability, granted only to few of us, to say yes and to mean it, right? That's a challenge. That's a challenge and a half. And a lot of it is recognizing the cultural barriers that we put up for ourselves for what they are, right? As meaningless chaff that we fight through or go around or dig under or whatever we have to do. And part of that is recognizing what works when it works, right? Trying to chart a path to yes before you start the conversation.
Awesome. So the last question I like to ask almost every panel that I host And framing it, I mean, at Appian, there's so many things that we've been, we always just try to figure out, okay, wouldn't it be great if, and then we try to figure out, okay, how are we going to get there? So I like asking this question. It's where you finish the sentence and thinking about it from a modernization standpoint of your programs and things like that. And it's a nice open-ended question because it really just says, okay, if I had the magic wand. So Lori, finish the sentence, wouldn't it be great if? So wouldn't it be great if?
Wouldn't it be great if money was no object, time was a limited resource, or an unlimited resource, bureaucracy didn't exist, the culture wasn't challenging, people's feelings, people didn't run in their feelings, and egos weren't a part of the actual process. So I know that for us, we could have gotten further quicker if we could have eliminated some of those barriers. Bureaucracy, we've been working on that with strategies and policies. We've been pushing the line, kind of going to your start on the path to yes. We have a saying inside of our office that we look at the road to a yes starts with a hell no. And so we do that. We strive every day to get to a yes. Sometimes money holds us back. The culture is limiting sometimes. So recognizing when you can go around it, sort of to your same thing of when are the people in the process matter and when do they don't. Understanding that, understanding how to push the envelope, and then challenging ourselves to be in positions where we really don't take no for an answer. We challenge people to show us why it's a no. So it would be great if all those variables didn't exist and we could just all work together as a collaborative team to move our nation forward, because for us, being in the Department of Defense, we're all out there for every one of you as American citizens to sort of drive our nation's security. And so it'd be great if we could all play well together.
Well, the work that you've done with GFIM has been incredible. It's something that's going to affect hundreds of thousands of soldiers. It's a great thing. So thank you, Don. Wouldn't it be great if?
That's hard to follow. There's a saying in the building: if you're not talking about money, you're just talking. So I will talk very, very briefly about money. Wouldn't it be great if we realized savings when we achieved them?
Yeah.
Here's what I mean by that. So much of what we do is throwing good money after bad, and we know it, right? We invest in these really big programs, and we've already invested, a huge amount of money, and something better comes along, some better solution, some better technology, some better approach to the problem. And too often our response to that is we're so committed to the behemoth we built that we're not willing to even consider a better, faster, different approach, right? Whether that's because of political ramifications, whether that's because of personalities, whether that's because of politics, whatever. It's keeping us from realizing savings when we could achieve them. And so wouldn't it be great if? Wouldn't it be great if we all had the same view of savings from our perspective, no matter who we are, right? That we could actually recognize and quantify immediately, hey, if I take this different path, the federal government writ large will save X dollars, right? Not it's going to come out of this program line, not it's going to come out of this service. It's the federal government writ large will save X dollars. And then we start talking at that point. Right now, we can't even quantify that. I would love for all of us to have a common understanding of what drives costs and what achieves savings.
Wouldn't it be great if we weren't scared of trying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd call both those answers, I call it a draw. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been so insightful. Both Don and Lori are tip of the spear, making huge changes, and you'll read more and more about them just because they are the change that everybody hopes everybody could see. So I just want to everybody give them a huge round of applause. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.